It is here. It is finally upon us. The college football national championship game. And if you don't know, that is between the Michigan Wolverines and the Washington Huskies. This is number one and number two. I mean, this is pretty much how it was drawn up. When you see the rankings, the final rankings, you think, all right, these are the two best teams. It should be the two best teams at the end. Well, that is exactly what happened this year when Michigan defeated Alabama in the Rose Bowl and Washington defeated Texas in the Cotton Bowl. Sorry, Cotton or Sugar Bowl. I keep forgetting. I keep confusing
Oh,
those two.
Washington, Texas was a Sugar Bowl.
Sugar Bowl, my
Yeah.
apologies. But yes, where Washington defeated Texas in the Sugar Bowl. So, like I said, we got number one, we've got number two here, and it is finally upon us. So, going into this game as of right now, Michigan money line is minus 192 favorites. Could shock some people, but they are also 4.5 points is the spread right now in favor of Michigan. And we're looking at the over under of 56.5 points. So I'm really interested to see how our guys feel about this. I'm interested to see how you guys feel about this. Do you think these numbers are right? And we are going to have a special debate today. This is a bonus session here, and we are hopefully giving you guys a treat while we cover the national championship game. So, first things first, welcome, guys. This is Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. I am your host, Matthew Raridan, and with me today, even though he's still not feeling 100%, is my co-host, David Street.
What's up, everybody?
And we also have Ed Smith.
Hook 'em, y'all.
And besides college football, we are all three happy today. Our teams won, and all three of our teams in the NFL are going to the playoffs. Me being the Steelers fan, and if you can't tell, with David being the Bucks fan, and Ed with the cheese head in the back and the hat, Packers fan. So we are happy there. But this is not about NFL today. This is about college football, and we are going to debate. And the debaters today is going to be David and Ed. And I'm going to start here first with offense. Who has the better offense going into this game? And I want to hear your guys' opinion. So, Ed, why does Michigan, do you feel, have the better offense going into this game?
Well, Michigan, or as some would like to say, Baltimore Ravens of the college ranks, uh, would like to say they do not have the explosion that you're going to find from Washington. But I got to tell you, they are efficient and they will move you down the field against your will for 4 quarters, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Michigan, for points per game, is at 36.0, which is 12th in the country. But it's half a point per play. So that's kind of an anomaly when it comes to number of plays being run in college football. You know, you see your 90 plus play offenses. You know, you're talking at half a point of play, you're talking 72 to 75 plays a game, and you're getting a point every other play. So that is, you know, just efficiency in and of itself. Now, when you start looking at taking a deeper dive into, you know, how they get down the field, they're number 22 in third down conversions and number 3 in fourth down conversions. That means that they run it down to where it's 4th and 1 and convert the 4th and 1 with a running attack that is just steady and punishing. You know, with that offensive line being an NFL offensive line, pushing with Blake Corum in the backfield, who had 25 touchdowns this season. Yes, I realize a lot of these numbers are against Big Ten opponents, but guess what? A lot of Washington's numbers were against Pac-12 opponents. So I will take some salt on that one. As we go through and take a look at the different sections of the offense, you know, as I mentioned, Blake Corum, he's dynamic. He is a 1,000-yard rusher again at 4.7 yards a carry, 1,100 yards. He's got the changeup of Donovan Edwards. J.J. McCarthy can run when he needs to. These are things that will stress a defense and just put a lot of pressure on the other team to just not feel squeezed by this offense. Because they squeeze you like a sponge. They will squeeze the lifeblood out of you if you let them. And nobody's really been able to stop that. You take a look at the game against Alabama. They were in control of that game. Less than 11 points that they gave away through special teams, which we'll get to that in a minute. They basically own that game. So I don't see how Washington is going to be able to keep up when you have such limited possessions. I'm looking at number of possessions that needs to be set at about 8 possessions for each team. If we hit 8 possessions or less for Michigan runs away with this thing. Because you're going to have Washington just trying to fling the ball down the field and get more possessions, and they're just not going to be able to do it. With the passing offense, they are efficient as well. 9 yards a pass attempt. That is one of the that is top 14 in the country with a 73% completion percentage. So what's happening and what I've seen from them is that running game is getting those safeties to creep down, and they creep down, and they creep down, and then all of a sudden RPO hits, and they hit Roman Wilson, over the top, and it becomes an explosive play because they are so punishing within that 5 to 10 yard zone running the ball. It is creating so many more opportunities over the top. There are so few interceptions thrown when they do throw that it's going to be tough to turn the tide against this offense because they are number 1 in turnover margin in the country. So they're not giving the ball away enough to let the other team back into it. So overall, this is going to be a slow, steady, methodical offense going against a Washington defense, and basically imposing their will. And the more that their will gets imposed, the less chance that Washington's going to have.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much what I'm hearing is that they are a clean and efficient team on offense, and they have been showing that throughout the whole year. But I want to hear David's take on why Washington is the best offense going into this game.
Well, why is Washington the best offense? Because quite literally, across the board, they are. I mean, I think it's cool and all that Michigan is efficient, but across the board, Washington is literally the better offense, especially in the most important categories in total offense and scoring offense. And at the end of the day, guys, this is still a quarterback's league, and Michael Penix, I won't say he's far and away better than JJ McCarthy, but there's a reason why Penix was a Heisman finalist and why McCarthy was not. And when you look at the schedules, like when you look at the teams that Washington has faced, Washington has beaten some very good, very sound defenses. Oregon, Texas, Arizona State, Oregon State. All these teams are, and Utah. I almost forgot about Utah. All these teams are very sound defensively, and Washington has beaten all those teams. Oregon twice, especially. You look at the balance of the teams. Ed talks about Blake Corum, who is a phenomenal running back. The dude has 25 scores on the ground, which, to be honest with you, I did not realize he had that many touchdowns on the ground. I mean, I knew obviously that he was a very good player this year, as he's been a very good college player, but I did not realize that he's had that many touchdowns. But I would still give the edge to Washington. Now, you might think, well, Washington's a pass first offense, and that is true. So you would think that Washington would not be so balanced. But guys, Dillon Johnson ain't no scrub either, right? He's got 16 touchdowns on the ground, 1,000 yards, 1,000 plus yards. I look at it as Michigan has a very good running back and a very good quarterback. I don't know if I can call Blake Corum an elite running back, just because I think in order to be elite, you have to have a lot more yards on the ground than he has right now. Whereas Washington has Washington has a very good running back and an elite quarterback, and I think that is the best combination of the two. Now, that being said, it should be noted that even though Washington has one of the best offenses in the country, and certainly far and away the best passing offense in the country, their offense does slow down a little bit, especially in the second half. So, in the first quarter and the second quarter, they're both top 10. They're, I believe, seventh in first quarter scoring, and they're in the top five in second quarter scoring. But in the third quarter and the fourth quarter, their offensive numbers go down, quite a bit to the point where they're below they're below the 30s. They're well into the 40s and 50s in the second quarter scoring. Obviously, it hasn't affected them that much, as they still have been able to go 14-0. But that's just something that I think, I think Michigan will have to take into consideration. But all that being said, I still like Washington in this game, mainly just because of the quarterback play.
Yeah, Blake Corum is what I like to call all reliable. He has been pretty steady always for Michigan. You could always count on him. And yeah, putting up 27 touchdowns this year. I mean, when it is a goal line situation, they go to him every single time. He is their power back there. So I will say that when it comes to that. But, we are also looking at the new rules in college with the time, with how the clock is running, the game clock, and it is shortening possessions per game for teams. And that's where, if you heard Ed's point about if it's under X amount of possessions, it could rule in Michigan's favor. The thing with Washington is, you said it, David, they do have an elite quarterback, whereas I don't believe Michigan does. And there is a reason that Washington and Michael Penix Jr., he was the runner-up in Heisman. They had a semifinalist with Rome Odunze in the Biletnikoff Award, who is going to be a first-round pick. And they did win the Joe Moore Offensive Line Award. Granted, Michigan, they did have an injury with during the game against Ohio State, where it was a big blow to their offensive line. But Michigan, come this draft, is going to have 5 or so offensive linemen drafted pretty much in the first couple rounds alone. That's just how elite their offensive line is. But the way I look at things is throughout the entire year, and even going into the postseason, I'll say the semifinalists of the college football playoffs, Washington continued their dominance on offense. So when it comes to these two offenses, I have to give the edge to Washington. So that has my advantage is Washington's offense going into this game. But things could be a little different, like David said, going into the second half of the game. Washington's to slow down. Well, they're going to be playing a very good defense in Michigan. And so I will get to Ed here in a bit when it comes to their defense, but I want to hear David. I want to hear you talk about Washington's defense. Do they have the edge going into this game?
Well, listen, when you hear the words Washington Huskies, are you thinking about the defense? Probably not, right? You're thinking about the offense, because that's what Washington is known for. They are known as an offensive team, and they're not elite defensively. I think Washington fans, players, coaches will be the first to tell you that. But here's the thing: while Washington may not be known for its defense, that doesn't mean you should sleep on its defense either. One stat I found particularly interesting is that Washington's defense is actually at its best in the fourth quarter. Not in terms of like raw numbers or anything like that, but just in comparison to where all the other FBS defenses are at. Like, if you compare their defense to other Division One defenses, Washington performs its best in the fourth quarter, right? And when you're being led by an elite air attack offense like that, the best thing you can ask for is a defense that shuts the door, in the fourth quarter. And then also, again, when I'm looking at the schedules here, I don't want to discredit Michigan too much, because of course they have a phenomenal defense. But let's face facts here: who was the best quarterback that Michigan has faced? Jalen Milroe, Talia Tagovailoa, maybe. Who's the guy from Ohio State that just transferred? Obviously not that
McCord.
important because I can't remember his name. But yeah, whoever that guy was. I mean, no
McCord.
offense, McCord. Thank you, Kyle McCord. I mean, no offense to Michigan fans, but your defense didn't exactly face a murderer's row of quarterbacks. Whereas, meanwhile, look at who Washington has faced defensively. No, Noah Fafita, Quinn Ewers, Bo Nix twice. And sure, they let up points against those guys, but at the end of the day, they were still able to get the win because they were able to shut things down, when they mattered the most. And I think if Washington can turn this into a high scoring game, if they can turn this into the game that they want, which obviously it's easy to say, well, if Michigan can turn the game they want, which is fair, but if Washington can turn from the very beginning, can turn this into the kind of game they want, the kind of air raid style that they want, I think that's a dangerous position for Michigan to be in, because then they're kind of in that trap. They're in Washington's trap right there, because the Huskies are playing the kind of style that suits them. And when it comes to the fourth quarter, with all the points that Washington has scored, then they can rely on their defense to shut things down. So, as I said, Washington is not known for its defense. But hey, you know what, guys? Obviously Washington's defense has not been bad enough, because Washington is 14-0 at the end of the day. It's not like LSU's defense, which was just absolute trash, and LSU did have a better quarterback, in my opinion. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Washington, they've had several games this year where their defense has actually kept them in the game because their offense just decided they didn't want to show up. We saw that in the Arizona State game. And we saw that Washington State as well. It's their defense has held them in games, or at least kept them in games just enough for their offense to put something together. And it's weird to even say that because here we were just talking about how Washington's offense will have the edge going into this game. But their defense, although they aren't known as to be the greatest defense, they do have some pieces there. I mean, Muhammad at cornerback, I mean, we saw what he was able to do against Texas. Trice, I mean, he's a first round pick right there. So they do have some playmakers there. But Michigan, I want to hear what Ed has to say when it comes to Michigan and their defense and how steady they've been throughout the whole year.
Well, people say that the best defense is a good offense, and that's complementary football. That is what Michigan does. Now, yes, Washington is top tier as far as all these offensive categories, but guess who's top tier in all these defensive categories? This is Michigan's bag, 100%. In fact, there's a story floating around that a couple years ago, Jim Harbaugh went to his brother John and said, who can we get to install the Ravens defense in my team? And he was like, Jesse Minter or Mike McDonald. And lo and behold, they got Jesse Minter, and guess where the defense is? It's right at number 1. This is a defense that not only gets after you on the defensive line, but they also defend on the back end. Now, going to Washington's offense, they remind me a lot of, for all the old heads out there, the 98 Vikings. They had 3 great receivers and a running back that could kill the clock once they got a lead. Well, guess what? In this game, I don't think Washington's going to get a big enough lead to lean on that run game the way that they have getting up to the 14-0. Because Michigan's defense is number 20 in opponent red zone scoring, which Washington doesn't really do a whole lot of because they do a lot of bombs away. But it's 4.1 yards per play, which is number 4 in the country. 10.2 points per game. That is number 1 in the country. These are all stats that are going to make a huge difference to Washington's offense. that run game that has killed the clock for Washington as they slow down and drain the clock in the second half, which is why Washington's defensive numbers look so good in the fourth quarter. It's all Michigan's only giving up 3 yards a rush, which is top 7 in the country. So these are all things that, as a collective group, they're doing very well. But you know what else they do? They do not let wide receivers just run amok on them. They are getting them on the back end. In fact, there are 8 players with more than 3 or more passes defended. And if you really want to look at a shining star in the defensive backfield, Mike Sarenstill, he has 5 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, and 6 passes defended. He needs to be the guy on Odunze, to keep that neutralized, because, with the other cornerbacks that are there, they're going to be able to match up well against the Washington wide receivers. And yes, those receivers are going to get theirs, but I doubt that we're going to see Michael Penix Jr. complete 90% of his passes the way that he did against Texas. There was some stick'em stuff going on in that game, and I couldn't understand how that was happening. But that's not going to happen in this game. Washington's going to try and push the tempo in the first half to create those extra possessions like I talked about before. Michigan's not going to let them. It is going to be a total, irresistible force versus immovable object, when it comes to the Washington offense to Michigan's defense. And that's really going to be the game. It is going to be that more award-winning offensive line for Washington against Michigan's defensive line. I think that's where this game is won and lost, and I'm taking defense to win championships all day long.
Yeah, I mean, because that's what they've always done. I mean, I was talking with Ed the other day actually about this, and going into the national championship game back in the 2019-2020, and that was LSU versus Clemson. Anytime number one offense versus a number one defense had played, the defense won every single time. And now that has changed because LSU won that game. So how are things going to play out this game? Because I know Washington isn't the number one offense, but they are top 3, and that is statistical, whereas Michigan is the number one defense. So I'm interested to see how this is going to go, but I have to lean on defense towards Michigan. Clearly, they have proven that the entire year, and they are going to show that in the national championship game, but to what extent against this elite offense? So just to cover really quick, although Michigan's offense is no scrubs, I don't think they are as elite on offense as Washington, and vice versa on defense, where Washington's defense is not horrendous. However, though, they are not Michigan's defense. So I would have to go with Michigan's defense having the advantage there. But this is where things get very interesting. This is where I think it is very close, and that is special teams. And special teams is several different categories in itself, with kicking, punting, returns, you name it. But this is where, when you look at the stats, it is very close. So, Ed, can you take us through here on why you think Michigan's special teams, even though the blunders they had last week, is still going to be the better team?
Well, with Michigan, their transfer from Louisville, James Turner, he is 16 of 19 on field goals this year, 61 of 62 extra points. That's a lot of consistency for a field goal kicker for as many times as he's been trotted out there. Now, the overall conversion is 66%, but when you don't need to kick that many field goals because you are dragging the other team down the field to the end zone, you just don't need to do it that often. Now, I will say one of the big, I put this under special teams, but it's really about the entire team. It's just a special deal. it's the penalties. Right now, Michigan is showing number one in the country in penalties per game, 2.9 called against them. So less than 3 penalties per game called against them and giving up only 26 penalty yards per game. That means, to what you said earlier, Matthew, they play a clean game, offensively and defensively. Now, they were exposed a little bit on the operation of special teams during that semifinal game, and I'm sure there was a lot of stair running to clean that up over this week for the special teams group. But the other part, the other thing that I put under special is time of possession. Time of possession for Michigan has been 54% in their favor versus their opponents. That is a tremendous chunk and not allowing a lot of time for the other offense to play. So you throw those specials in there, and then it comes down to coaching. You know, Jim Harbaugh, he's been there. He's seen this. He has seen this on the biggest stage there is. He is going to have his team ready for this. And, you know, so he will have all this operational stuff cleaned up. The team is going to play clean. They're going to hold on to the ball. These are all things that are going to lean in Michigan's favor.
Yep. I mean, having to clean up those, I'll say jitters, because they have been consistent all year on special teams. But the jitters they had in the Rose Bowl, you can't have that in the national championship game. It does not get any bigger than this. And against a team like Washington and their offense, you can't afford any blunders, any jitters, any turnovers. But with that being said, though, they have been very consistent with James Turner for the most part on field goals and extra points. But there's also another kicker that has been very consistent throughout the year, and I'm pretty sure David's going to talk about that with Washington. So, David, I mean, how are you feeling on the Washington end and why they have the edge going in?
Well, I think Washington should feel great about its special teams because, as you alluded to, Grady Gross has been money this year. He's made all of his extra point attempts, and he's made 80% of his field goal attempts. As I said, money. You know, guys, when I was comparing special team stats between Michigan and Washington, it was tough for me because they're fairly evenly matched. But I think ultimately, I think you have to give the edge to Washington here because they say defense wins games, right? Well, if you look at Washington's special teams defense, I think you'll see that it's actually better than Michigan's. And you know, an opponent punt return yards per game, Washington is 70th. Now that might not sound great until you hear what I'm about to tell you what Michigan is ranked. Michigan in that same category is ranked like 126th, 127th. They're in the 120s. So clearly Washington has the edge there. But also, really at the end of the day, guys, the biggest reason why I have to give the edge to Washington is because Washington did not have a special team disaster class the way that Michigan did in the Alabama game. Now, sure, you might say, well, that's only just one game. Doesn't really seem fair to judge just one game. Well, I think that sort of incompetence can carry over into the next game. I think that can turn into a mental thing. Whereas, did Washington have a special teams disaster class against Texas? If they did, I certainly didn't see it at all. But yeah, that's what I would say right there. And as I said before, when you're looking at the way that they defend against opponent special teams, look at the punt return yards that they allowed. You'll see that Washington clears Michigan there. So I don't think Washington is that much better on special teams, but I think when it matters most, when crunch time comes, the edge has to go to them, in my opinion.
Yeah, when I said that this is going to be a tough and close one, I meant it. I mean, I want to throw out these numbers of how close this is. Michigan's kicker with James Turner has 16 made field goals. Well, Grady Gross, Washington's kicker, has 16 made field goals. They are the only difference is the amount of attempts, and that is 19 for Turner and 20 for Gross. So there are only one difference there. But here's this extra points. They both have 62 attempts. Obviously, the one that was missed for Gross was in the Rose Bowl. So he is 61 for 62, whereas Grady Gross is 62 for 62. So you are seeing it close right there. But now let's talk about punt returns. So punt returns, Washington averages 10.22 yards a return, and that is them returning it. Michigan averages 10.08. So they are right there as well, neck and neck. It does change though on kick returns, but kick returns they don't happen a whole lot nowadays, so I won't get into that as much, but they are neck and neck with almost every category there that I've read off. However, though, and this is where I do have to agree with David. 3 of Grady Gross's 16 field goal made were in a college football playoff game against Texas, whereas Turner has one of his misses in a playoff game. So I feel like the edge has to go to Washington here because when it meant the most, their kicker, their special team showed up. Whereas Michigan, it did not. Whereas if they redeemed themselves with their special teams winning the game against Alabama, maybe I could say that. But their special teams almost cost them the game. Let's not forget that, where he fumbled the ball and brought it all the way down pretty much to the 1 yard line at the end of the game before it went to overtime. Left no room for comfort for his team to even really kneel the ball. So that's where I feel like when it comes down to it, Washington's special teams did show up, and they rightfully have the edge in my book when it comes to special teams. But this isn't the only close category. The next, and this is our final category here, is who has the edge when it comes to coaching. Is it the seasoned vet who is in the NFL with Jim Harbaugh, or is it Kalen DeBoer who has had success at many levels within college football itself? So I'm going to let David take this first. Tell us why Kalen DeBoer has the edge in the coaching category and the whole the whole Washington coaching staff.
Because all Kalen DeBoer does is win, 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 baby. No, seriously, like look at this guy's coaching record. Not just at Washington, but at all the schools that he's been to. His wins, his winning percentage is absolutely absurd. And then not only that, but he has shown that he can turn a program around just like that. Let's not forget. Do you guys remember what Washington's record was the year before Kalen DeBoer got there? They were 4-8, right? 4-8. And then he gets there, and now in their second year, Washington is already in the college football playoffs. That's insane. And then you look at who he's done it with Michael Penix. Well, there was no guarantee that Michael Penix was even going to be the quarterback that he was. I think he had a lot of potential. I think we all saw at Indiana when Michael Penix was healthy, we could see like, oh, okay, like this guy actually has some potential there. But of course, the main problem with Penix was that he was always injured and he had multiple surgeries. So there was no guarantee that he was going to get to the point where he is at right now. So the fact that Michael Penix has been able to blossom into the quarterback he is right now, I think is just a huge testament to Kalen DeBoer as well. And then also, Matthew, you said it yourself before about Washington's offensive line winning the Joe Moore Award, which I think you should also credit to Kalen DeBoer as well, because clearly clearly this guy is an offensive mastermind with the way that he's just been able to kind of craft this whole offense together and really kind of build it around Penix. I mean, this offense lives and breathes, rides and dies with Michael Penix Jr., right? Um, and listen, I don't know what's going to happen when Michael Penix leaves Washington when he gets drafted. Is it possible that Washington takes a step back and Kalen DeBoer looks like he was carried by Penix? Sure, that's possible, but we're not there at this point. As I said, all right, Nobody thought Michael Penix would be the quarterback he is right now, and certainly nobody thought that Kalen DeBoer would be able to coach Washington to where they're at right now. And I think ultimately what has to give DeBoer the edge is the fact that Michigan has been in a bunch of close games, right? Because a lot of times, if you're blowing out teams, sure, that's some coaching right there. But most of the time, in my opinion, that just comes down to a pure talent standpoint. I mean, how do you think the Cowboys? I mean, I know this is NFL, but how do you think the Cowboys have been blowing out all those teams? Because they have a clear talent advantage, but they're going to crap the bed in the playoffs because you know yeah, I think we all know why. But when you have all these close wins, Matthew, then I think ultimately that comes down to coaching, right? What am I going to scheme up? What plays am I going to draw here? How am I going to use my timeouts effectively? And the fact that Washington has been 14-0, despite most of their games being in single digits, is a testament to just how good Kalen DeBoer has been on the sidelines, especially when it comes to crunch time. So that is why, even though Jim Harbaugh is a phenomenal head coach, that is why I have to give the edge to Kalen DeBoer.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up some great points, and all he does is win. All he does is win, and he has shown that through his career as a coach. And as a Duck fan, and I may get even roasted for this, but I like the guy. I think he is the right guy for that program. He is what that program needed, and he is doing all the right things, especially going into the Big Ten. So I will give him that credit there. But I want to hear Ed and his remarks on why not just Jim Harbaugh, but the entire Michigan Wolverines coaching staff is going to have the edge.
Sure. And yes, DeBoer has won all these games with less than 10-point differential. That shows that he can run down the clock like nobody's business. By having a lead, just bleed the clock until the game's over. But you know what is a true testament to a great coaching staff? It's not having your head coach for half of their games in the season and they still wind up undefeated. Sharon Moore coached 5 of the 6 games that Harbaugh was out, and 2 of the biggest games they had this year, which was Penn State and the game against Ohio State, and they didn't skip a beat. They knew exactly who they were as a team, and everybody is bought into one unit what across the board. Jesse Minter did coach in the interim for their first game of the year, but the rest of the time it's been Sharon Moore, which he has certainly earned his stripes being the offensive coordinator of this offense that has just dominated using the talent that they have and gearing the offense to the personnel that they've recruited. With the defense, they have gotten a bunch of hosses in recruits, and Minter has molded them into an NFL style defense. They have done a phenomenal job of being complementary of each other as one unit, the Michigan Wolverines, as opposed to the Michigan offense and the Michigan defense. They're not two separate things. They are a single unit. And Jim Harbaugh has coached the coaches, which is not talked about enough. He has coached the coaches to be able to further their development and coaching the program without him, because who knows if this is Harbaugh's last game in Michigan. He's going to be able to leave the legacy to Sharon Moore and anybody else that stays there as he moves on to the NFL.
Yeah. So Harbaugh has shown, obviously, throughout his career that he can win. Although he has not won the big game as a coach, he has won some, milestone games and has brought his teams to the championship. We saw that with the Niners. We saw a bowl game win with Stanford, and then now we're seeing it here was bringing Michigan to the national championship game. So they both have winning in their DNA, and that's all they want to do is win. I mean, if you're a college head coach and you don't want to win, you are in the wrong profession. So, they want that and they have that will to win. But this is a tough one. And to me, I'm looking at it as it's so close that it's 50.1% for one of these coaches and 49.9%. That's just how close I have this here. But ultimately, the edge I have to give, and that is because of what they've done and the success they've had in many of their ventures, and that's Jim Harbaugh. I think that not only him, but this Michigan Wolverines coaching staff, that is what they have done this year. And to lose their head coach and to still win is a tough thing to do. Granted, they weren't the best wins, and some of them were against some very trash teams, especially at the beginning. But they still were able to do that. And not just that, but the mastermind to bring in from your brother's coaching staff, Jesse Minter, to come over. I mean, they flip-flopped. I mean, you're hearing how much it really mattered for both of these teams. Look at the Baltimore Ravens this year. Look at that defense. Well, look at Michigan's defense and what they've been doing over the last couple of years, and that is because of a coaching mastermind by not only one but two different Harbaughs. So I do want to point that out there too, because that's how great John Harbaugh is too, and we're going to see what he does with his teams in the playoffs. But this is no discredit to Kalen DeBoer. That's why I think it is that close, 49.9% in my book. So I do think, though, that just by a slim chance that Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines staff have the edge with the coaching. So, but you look at that, and if we want to tally these things up, no surprise here, it is 2-2 when it comes to David and Ed. I mean, the last two were tough. They were close. But when it comes to the offense, I think we are in agreement that Washington does have the better offense, whereas Michigan has the much better defense. But special teams and coaching, it may even come down to that. Who knows? We really don't know. But with the debate points, I mean, I award 2 points to Ed and 2 points to David. However you want to settle this tie, you can. But I think we should settle it with our score predictions and how we are going to see the winners here. So, David, I'm going to have you take over the score prediction first. But keep in mind, right now, the over-under is 56.5. So, how are you seeing this?
Oh, man. Well, guys, playing in close games for most of the year has been Washington's specialty, and I don't think it's going to stop now. I think this game is going to be a classic. I think it's going to be a national championship game that we talk about for quite some time. It's going to be one of those games. And ultimately, I have the Huskies edging the Wolverines by a 3-point margin, 38-35. And I think Washington scores a field goal within the last few minutes of the fourth quarter to pull ahead. So 38-35, Washington is my final prediction.
All right, it's sounding close. Ed, are you seeing it close, and are you seeing the same Victor?
I am not seeing the same Victor, and I'm not seeing it as high scoring. I'm going to take the under on this one. I'm going to go 24-23 Michigan, and simply because Michigan's going to stop one of those 2-point conversions at the end of the game to take home the title.
Okay. So here we go. We got 2 close games there. Something inside of me is telling me to follow Ed's suit on the under and how close it's going to be, but I can't. I'm going with a 35-28 Washington Huskies victory.
And he's an Oregon fan, folks, so he's not being biased at all.
No, it doesn't mean I'm pulling for them either. I would much rather be wrong in this situation, by all means. But if they've done it throughout this whole year with this offense, and I just don't see them stopping and slowing down going into this championship game. Granted, they have not played a number one defense. They have not played this Michigan Wolverine team, but I just think that this offense is going to be just so much better. So I have it 35 to 27, an 8-point margin there. So I'm taking the over with a 35-27 Washington Husky victory.
So 35-27 or 35-28? I thought you
Right.
said 28 before.
I did. I meant to say 35-27. So 35.
Oh, okay. Okay, I got you.
I was thinking 8-point margin there. So 35-27 Washington is my prediction there. But I want to hear your guys' predictions. I mean, this is the biggest game of the year. It is the final game of the year, and I would love to hear what your guys' predictions are. Are me and David crazy going for Washington here, or is Ed crazy going with Michigan? I mean, I think it is the two best teams for the reason, and they are there. And I'm just looking forward to watching this game. So I want to know what you guys think. If you're looking forward to it, how you guys see these things, and who you think may have the better offense, the better defense, better special teams, or better coaching, because I do think it gets pretty close towards the latter. So, but that is about all we have today, folks. So if you could please hit that like, subscribe button, share these videos, comment, just let us know how you guys are feeling and what we can do to help make this more, better, and enjoyable for you. And we lastly want to thank ADP, and that is American Daily Press. Please check them out, guys. Unbiased news, just like I try to be unbiased with our sports here. They are unbiased when it comes to that. They just want to deliver but nothing but the truth. So check out AmericanDailyPress.com. Hey, you may see some guys that look familiar on there. Maybe us three. Who knows? But go ahead and check them out, guys. But till next time, we are rounding third, and we are headed for home.
Rest in peace, Pac-12.